This is the first time we've been using this piece of technology to do a Facebook Live. So you might see me like going like this and pressing various buttons, but I really wanted to do a quick Q&A call really for you guys to follow up, because I created, just to give you a little bit of background as to why I've created this Facebook Live. I have been asked a lot by my clients about the link between perimenopause, menopause, well, mainly menopause, because a lot of people have never heard of perimenopause. The link between that and how we feel, right? So the link with that and anxiety or depression or just feeling, or, you know, the physical side effects. And I didn't know the answers to those questions. So I got Tanya, who you can see here on the screen, along to as the expert in this area, because that's what I love to do. Is if I don't know something, I'll go and find someone else who does. And thought I would ask her about everything that there was to know about this particular area. And so we got together a couple of weeks ago and we created a podcast episode together. And so many of my clients have been waiting on the edge of their seat for this pod. They're like, is it this week? Is it coming this week? Is it coming this week? And they've been really desperate to hear it. And so I thought what we do is do a Q&A session to follow up as well. So if you've got comments, if you're here, you can type in. I can see Julie's here, so welcome. Anyone who's watching, you know, great. You can drop us notes, drop us comments, drop us questions as we're talking, because I can see how many. We've got 14, I think, people watching at the moment. I'm just working out the technology, so you'll see me going like this, seeing all the different things. So say hi Teresa, hi Julie. And as we're talking, just type in questions, and we'll be here. Well, we don't know how long we'll be here. 10 minutes, an hour, we don't know. We'll see. It depends on you guys and how many questions. And please excuse me, I'm slurping on the lemon sip at the same time because I've come down with a horrible cold. So if you hear me doing that in the background, I apologize. Hi, Lorraine. So I think because we only released the podcast this morning, Tanya, I think it would actually be a great idea if you wouldn't mind just doing like a recap, like a 5-10 minute recap of what we talked about this morning, just to give people a flavor of kind of where we were coming from in that podcast or what you were sharing on that podcast, so that gives us the kind of foundation for the discussion to go ahead.
Right. Okay. Well, I always like to go back to the definition of terms, because I think that so many women in their 40s are suffering from all these symptoms, and especially mood swings, big one, and night sweats, all kinds of skin problems, etc., and they don't know it's anything to do with a midlife change. So It's important to know that perimenopause is the time that leads up to menopause, and menopause now is defined as 1 year after your last period. And I see a lot of women sort of confused about it. And for me, those are only terms, right? For me, our midlife change is a period of change that's in a flow. So it seems like the medical world has sort of divided it up. There's even another term I saw, never mind. But it's divided it up, and there's now perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And the medical world maybe wants to know where you are in that time. But for different women, the way that they experience midlife change will be different. Some people will get a ton of symptoms and won't notice any changes in their period. And then some changes in their period will come, and then they'll start putting it all together. And some women will notice changes in their period first and then get a whole bunch of symptoms afterwards. So that can be different for different women. But it's important to know that we're sort of talking about menopause as it used to be known, which is like the whole period of change, or perimenopause and menopause. But we're talking about midlife change. And what we covered in the podcast was really this idea of can we blame our hormones, and what causes and what can cure our symptoms.
Yep. Tanya's gone. Hang on a minute. And we'll get her back. Hopefully we'll get her back. Okay, so we're just wait. Oh, there she is.
Okay. I don't know. I lost you.
Okay. So we just lost you. Sorry, that might have been a button I pressed.
Okay. I'm back. Okay, so what I was saying, I can't remember. I was talking about hormones, our hormones to blame. So So what I discovered very early on in my research is that that it's actually not our hormones which are to blame for our symptoms. Our hormones create a sensitive time in our lives, but they don't actually create the symptoms. Symptoms are created by other things in our life, and the big thing is stress. And we know that because women can have the same fluctuating hormone patterns. Two women, let's say, could have the same fluctuating hormone patterns, but two women will not experience the same symptoms. So it's obviously not created by the hormones, the symptoms, but the hormones create the background for the symptoms. So just as when we talked about this in the podcast, when we're a teenager or when we're pregnant or when we're postpartum, then we are in sensitive times. So during those times, if we are living in high stress, and if we're working too hard, and if we're overwhelmed with thoughts about who knows what, then our bodies start reacting. And if listeners have been pregnant, I think that's the best example, because when we're pregnant, we're much more willing to say, oh yeah, my body's in a sensitive period right now, because my body's trying to look after me and look after the baby. And so if we're totally exhausted when we're pregnant, we pretty much and pretty quickly will run to bed and say, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm going to sleep. And it happens to teenagers too, right? If listeners have teenagers at home, or they know teenagers, and they know that teenagers will sort of fall asleep at any time of the day, anywhere, right? That's just what they do. And that's just them listening to their body, the body saying, I'm tired. And they just don't give it that much thought. They're just like, okay, I'm going to bed. I'm just falling asleep on the couch. I'm falling asleep on the rug, or wherever they want to fall asleep. But when we're in perimenopause or menopause, we'll get these symptoms, and we're not so gentle on ourselves, because we're like, oh no, I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to run the kids here and there and everywhere, and I've got these emails, and I need to do everything. And the body's just saying, I'm exhausted, you need to sleep. And we're just not gentle on ourselves whatsoever. So I think, like I said, pregnancy is the best example for women who've been pregnant, because it's something they could probably remember, that sort of feeling of, I need to make a change, I need to make a shift. But that only goes on for 9 months. So most of us feel symptoms, maybe just the beginning at the end. And perimenopause and menopause goes on for years. So we need to be more patient with ourselves for years. And that's something that we spoke about in the podcast. Now, once we understand that our symptoms are actually just messages from our body, it's not about what we've grown to believe, which is our body's malfunctioning, right? This is really what we hear from modern medicine and from anywhere, really. When you start looking on the internet, when you realize you're in perimenopause, when you realize you're in menopause, you start doing some of your own research, and all you keep hearing is it's your hormones, and it's like your hormones are getting it wrong. And I come from an understanding of, well, that just doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't make sense that my hormones at midlife are suddenly going to get it wrong, because actually my hormones have been getting it pretty much right the whole of my life. Okay, no one had to intervene to tell me how to become from a baby to a toddler to a girl to a teenager to a woman, and when I became pregnant, when I gave birth. But there was just not that level of intervention. And even if women remember when they're pregnant, if you had symptoms, the doctor wouldn't come running with some hormones and say, oh, take some hormones. The doctor would just be like, well, you need to take better care of yourself, maybe, and you remember you need to rest and trust your body, and if you're lucky, if you've got a good gynecologist, they'll say that. But when it comes to midlife change, like, we just don't have that approach to our bodies. We're like, we need to fight through, we need to medicate, we need to just knock these symptoms out. And I question, why do we need to do that? Because the symptoms are actually telling us something about our lives. They're telling us something about the stress that we're living under. They're telling us something about the shifts that we need to make to live healthily. And I think this is the biggest, most unfortunate result of modern medicine in terms of the way that it understands a woman's body. Because modern medicine has sort of brought in through the ages these ideas of women's body malfunctioning, and especially women's body malfunctioning at midlife. Like, they didn't really know what to do. What's a woman around after her reproductive years. Like, what's the point, right? This was really the approach of modern medicine actually through the ages. And then almost modern medicine is like, well, if she's not reproducing, then what is she doing? And even though there are examples in the animal kingdom of animals such as orca whales that clearly live, like the maternal figure lives way beyond menopause and leads the pod, is it? The whale pod. But the scientists have been like, you know, just completely, what would you say, like confused by this idea that women actually live beyond their reproductive years, and what's the point? And so there is this idea of malfunctioning, something will go wrong, really built into theories about midlife women's health, and it's just not true. Our bodies have been designed to live healthily beyond menopause, and research shows that. And
yeah,
I
was just going to say, Tanya, from that, I mean, the kind of some of the main takeaway points I took from that call were just, and it's so obvious when you say it, but it's like, if we think that we get to a certain age and then our bodies start screwing up and not working properly and breaking, right, then we're going to have, I mean, men, women, aging, the whole aging process, right? But if we think we're going to reach a certain age and then our hormones are going to break, and then so we need to fix them, then every symptom we have is going to be kind of looked at through that reference, through that frame of reference, through that kind of thought filter, right? Where we say, oh, look, there's another example that I'm broken. There's another example, there's something going wrong. Oh, look, here we go. I'm forgetting stuff. That's another sign that something's going wrong. And then when we think we're breaking and going wrong, that's frightening because we don't understand it. And when we see all the media and stuff around us, it's like, oh yeah, this is where it starts getting really hard. This is what I'm going to be. That's it. I'm screwed for the next 10 years now, or however long it is. And through all of that, we then start to resist any physical symptoms that might come along just as a natural result of our hormones changing, right? So, you know, whatever those physical symptoms are, we resist them because we think it's our body malfunctioning. And what I kept hearing when you kept pointing to over and over again in the call is like, this is, our bodies are working perfectly, and then we tell stories about what's happening in our physical body to ourselves and scare ourselves or make ourselves upset or depressed or scared or anxious about our physical symptoms. And the other thing that you pointed to so much so is like that kind of wisdom that's in the body, right? That our body is our first line of kind of wisdom. It's showing us like, you can't live like when you were 20. Like, your body's not designed to live like when you were 20 years old and maintain the same pace as when you were 20 years old. And you don't need to maintain that pace. And so those two things is the wisdom in the body, and then there's our resistance to physical symptoms because we believe that it's the body going wrong. And something I've been seeing more clearly for myself recently around anxiety, but it's the same thing with this as well, is really just being reminded again, seeing more deeply how there is nothing inherently stressful in any physical symptom, ever. There are physical symptoms, and then there's our experience of them that we create through thought. And the two are completely and utterly separate, 100%. There is zero crossover. There is nothing inherently anxiety-making about migraine. And I know some of you who are watching right now will disagree with that. Yeah, I've been there, right? Got the t-shirt, and there's something, there's a feeling built into plucking your chin hairs, right? There's a feeling built into forgetfulness. Well, of course, anyone's going to get worried and frustrated when they forget stuff. And when we hear ourselves saying that, well, of course you're going to get annoyed when this happens or that happens, then that's kind of when we need to kind of clue into ourselves that we're making up stories. There's physical symptoms that happen. You know, it's not like when you get pregnant and you go, oh my God, my boobs have got really big. What do I do? What do I do? Right? It's like, we tell ourselves one story about that means that we don't freak out about it most of the time. And I just thought that was fascinating. And after I listened to your call, I shared a little bit of this with you. But after we recorded that call, I kind of said to you that there was something in that call that made me feel a little bit emotional as we were talking through the call. And then after the call, I felt really emotional. And then that night I had a migraine. And I haven't had a migraine for like 2 years. And I was really interested in that. But all the time I was having the migraine, I could hear your words saying, the body doesn't get it wrong. There's a wisdom in our physical symptoms. They're just trying to point us to something. And as I was experiencing the migraine, I was experiencing it with, instead of, oh shit, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This is going to be really awful. It was much more a case of experiencing it with a, wow, this is awesome. Like, I can't really describe it, but it was a completely different experience of a migraine than one might expect, right? And then for the few days after that, I was really wobbly. Just like, I don't know what it was, but there was something that shifted during that call that we had together. And I still don't entirely know what it is. But there's something in there around, and this is what I love about Insight, guys, when you're watching, is like there's something about hearing something that shifts something at a deeper level. You don't need to know what it is. You don't need to identify what it is. It's like, you just get the sensation that something's changed, and I'm just curious about how it unfolds from here. So that was just like a little update after our call, but that was definitely a mind-blowing podcast for me. And I'm not experiencing any of the symptoms. So. But I wanted to come because I've got some people asking questions here as well. So guys, just post in the chat if you've got questions that you want answered. And we've got one that was posted earlier that I'll come to as well. But there's one here where, and you must get this all the time, Tanya, where, so one of the very first questions on the feed, excuse me, I'm just looking. So Lorraine is asking, and this must be one of the first questions. So what supplements can we take? Like what should we be doing to, like, either medically or naturally, but like what should we be doing when we go through menopause? And that's like, that's our kind of initial go-to, isn't it? So like, something's going wrong. How do I fix it, Tanya?
Right.
Throw that one to you.
Okay. So first of all, I can say that in terms of women getting relief, I don't think that women need to suffer. Like my journey, let me just share a little bit of my journey. I had all these symptoms. I was taking all kinds of stuff to try and get relief. And I was doing acupuncture and healing and Bach remedies and all of this stuff. And everything could give me a little bit of relief. But I understood that when I was getting that relief, I wasn't listening to the messages that my body was trying to send me. So before I reached my cure, I went off everything, stopped going to acupuncture, left the Bach remedies, just left everything aside and got all my symptoms back. And from that place, I was able to find a cure. Now, the cure was an insight. The cure was an insight about how I was creating stress and how I didn't have to create it. Like, that simple. And that cured my physical and emotional symptoms. And it could be that I had to take some of these remedies to get relief first, to sort of like kind of get more relaxed about things. And then I was open to getting all the symptoms come back and then finding my cure. I don't know. But the thing that we're both pointing listeners to is this idea that your wisdom or mind, as we talk about it in the 3 principles, the wiser woman, as I talk about it in my work, is already within you. But we've just really forgotten how to listen to her or to the wisdom or to whatever you want to call it. But that innate wisdom will guide you as to if there is something that you can take to relieve your symptoms or to get something back to balance or something like that. And then it's going to be different for every woman. So even when I first discovered about perimenopause and I sort of like put all my symptoms together and I was like, oh, I'm in midlife change. And then I started researching sort of bioidentical hormones or natural hormone therapies or different things that you can eat. And they would work for some women and they wouldn't work for others. Like other women would have extreme reactions, just as some women can have extreme reactions to HRT. So the journey for every woman will be different. But I would say, rather than trying to chase after something outside, the most important thing that you can learn at midlife is how to look within, because the cure is actually within you. Your body already knows how to cure your symptoms. So we are in a sensitive time, and especially in our busy, stressful lives, it can be difficult sometimes when symptoms are going to pop up. But ultimately, your body wants you to learn. And I recently had this insight. It's like the more you learn about it and the more you can recognize symptoms as messengers, it's like you're getting another degree. And your body really wants you to get that degree in understanding bodily wisdom by the time you pass through menopause. So if you can understand it that way, I'm not saying, if you're having 20 migraines a week, or if you're suffering from terrible skin problems or whatever it is, don't try and seek some kind of relief that's symptom based. And that really depends on, what symptom you've got. But at the same time, be aware that we don't actually want to turn off the volume on our symptoms, because they're teaching us something. So when we start taking things, the pills that we are on offer, whether they're natural or not natural, the creams that we take, and whatever we can use, we're actually turning down the volume. And then women can say, oh, well, now I can just get on. Well, you can get on, but then you're not learning the lessons that your body wants you to learn.
And I think it's kind of similar to, my video's got stuck. Can you still hear me, Tanya?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I got myself stuck in a horrible facial expression.
Do you want me to get one too? And then
tell me if I stop talking somehow. But so for me, it was so when I had that migraine, I took a migraine leave because of the physical symptoms, but I was really listening to the deeper message of what was kind of being handed me to. I mean, what I saw from that migraine is slow down, girl. I have lots of life put lots of opportunities for me to see that. That's the thing I need to see over and over again. And so I can take some tablets to relieve the screaming, blinding headache and the nausea in that case. But I know to look for something else. They would be so, in the old days, I'd just take the tablets, get well as quick as I could, and then jump back in front of my desk as quickly as I possibly could, right? So that's kind of what you're pointing to, is that there might be something that a cream or something you take for your skin, but it's it's, and I want to ask you about something that follows on from this, Tanya, but it's how we're experiencing our skin breaking out, or how we're experiencing the whole, what that's pointing us to is totally created by thought, and is open to insight, and is open to change, and it's just worthy of a little bit of reflection. Okay. But on the other hand, so this is something that kind of the question that comes up for me next is I have a lot of clients who will listen to that podcast and go, I knew there was something wrong. I knew there was some physical symptoms. I knew there was some meaning coming from my physical symptoms, because a lot of my clients are highly aware of every single physical sensation they ever have. And they're constantly looking to it for meaning. So it's my heart's racing, my palms are sweaty today. That means I shouldn't go into work, right? Oh, that's the universe telling me not to go to work, right? Or I've got a migraine coming on, so I mustn't go to my mother-in-law's. Let's check in with how I feel before I decide what I'm going to do on any given day. So they're almost hypersensitive to physical sensations. So do you ever get, because what you're pointing to is, take a look and see what the simple message is behind them. But on the other hand, I know there'll be people going, God, I'm already looking at my symptoms all the time. Now you're telling me there's more to look at. Right. So where do you come to with that?
So the thing is about... Can you hear me with an echo?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. So the thing is about when we start to get an understanding, what happens is that then we can overanalyze and we don't take anything lightly anymore. And actually what our bodies really want us to do is lighten up about all the thoughts that we're having about our lives, our bodies, our hormones, about whatever it is that is, filling up our minds with thought and more thought and more thought. So we can get onto that track of, oh my God, I've got a symptom. What does it mean? And I've been there, okay? Because I talk about this in the podcast, sort of 9 months after all my symptoms cleared up, they started coming back again. And I was like, oh my God, my symptoms. Oh my God, it's a fake. Oh my God, I don't understand anything. And the only thing that could get me back was joy, was understanding, wait a minute, I'm supposed to live life in joy. And living life in joy means not taking anything with too much baggage, right? It's like when you took your migraine now. Like if you had thought, oh my God, what does that mean? That, I'm teaching about anxiety and stress, etc. And now I've got a migraine. No, it was just like, okay, this is my body talking to me.
Oh no, I did have some of that first, Tanya, I will say. Like,
well,
I went off into that first. I was like, oh my God, it was like, who am I to be teaching this stuff when I'm actually struggling with it? And then it was just such ripe ground for more insight. But that's by the by. I just wanted to set the record straight.
Okay, because we're all humans, okay? Yeah. We're all these
I did have a remarkably peaceful, totally unstress-free migraine. And then I went into pile of thinking afterwards about it, like the next day.
Okay, but that's because we're wiser women having a human experience, which is what I like to say. But the wiser woman never goes away. So it's like what I was saying about, you need another degree in understanding. The body just really you go through one level of understanding, and the body actually just wants you to go to the next. So, but we can't get there if we're stressed out about, oh my God, this symptom and what does that mean, etc. And I just wanted to come back because I can't see exactly all the comments. I can kind of see bits of them as they come. And someone asked about a multivitamin, which just goes back to something that I said.
Yeah.
Maybe a multivitamin is what you need, but I can't tell you that. That's not my job to tell you. But I think that there are all these lovely studies that have been carried out about how animals self-medicate with herbs and different things. And there's even this lovely story about a pregnant elephant that went really trekking, really way out of her regular feeding zone to completely eat this whole tree that the zoologist who was observing her had never seen her eat before. And 2 days later, she gave birth. And then this zoologist went and she was in Kenya, and she found out that Kenyan women also use the bark of this tree or something to ease birth. Now, how the hell does the elephant know that she needs to eat that tree before she gives birth? Okay, she is connected to mind, or to to her wiser inner elephant, and we can be connected too if we're not sort of like listening to, oh, you need this supplement, and you need that supplement, and you need, sometimes we do come into midlife and we're not having a balanced diet, and so we do need some kind of vitamin or flax seeds or chia seeds or whatever you want. But listen to, try and hear what your body wants you to know. I think that's what's important.
Well, I've got a question here as well from Nikki, who posted before the call. So I just want to read this out and just get your take on it. I can't for the life of me get my video back. I've tried everything I can. It's horrible. So guys, keep posting your questions in the comments, because when the questions run out, we'll stop the call. And I'll come back. Suzanne, you've asked a question there as well. I'll come back to you in a moment. So Nikki said, you might have covered this in the podcast, and I'll be listening to it later. I've been in Peri Menopause for 7 years and my symptoms have been awful. They do seem to be settling a bit this year, thank God. I've been feeling really flat in my mood for most of this time. My GP would say I'm depressed. I disagree. It's just a general feeling of meh. I live life to the full, but nothing seems to shift that feeling. It's like a 7-year cloudy day. I mean, that just summarizes the whole thing, doesn't it? I know the sunshine is underneath it, but boy, I can't access it. Also, I'd love to exercise, but I have zero energy. And when I do exercise, I can often bring on a migraine. And I won't do anything to risk a migraine, because in the beginning of perimenopause, I was getting around 20 migraines a month. Thankfully, they have also reduced dramatically. Like I say, all this might be covered in the podcast, but just wanted to make sure this low mood and lack of energy get covered. So ladies listening, is that anything that you're experiencing as well? If you're happy to share, please do. So Tanya, have you got any words that can help Nikki there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I can completely relate, because I used to be there too. I don't know if that will make her feel any better, but I used to have that sort of cloudiness all the time, and I couldn't understand what's going on. But I wanted to talk about the second part first, which is this feeling of exhaustion. And we spoke about that a little bit at the beginning. Again, I just think we're not gentle enough often. We're not gentle enough on ourselves during perimenopause and during menopause. And when, like, our bodies literally need more energy to get through this stage of development, and we need to get sleep. It's quite simple, but we go through thinking, oh, well, I can't possibly sleep because I haven't done enough with my day, or I need to read some more, I need to do that, or I need to answer those emails, or I need to put on another load of washing, or whatever it is. And actually, your body is just telling you need to sleep. So, when we're exhausted, there is no other solution apart from needing sleep. But you need to be able to recognize that your body is being wise with you and saying, I need some more energy and I need you to sleep. So the other thing that could come into that is if, she didn't mention this, but if she's suffering from night sweats or something that she's stressed about might be keeping her up at night. And that often makes women more exhausted as well. So, but again, night sweats are a symptom. They're sort of the sister of the hot flash. They often come before. And they can often keep women up at night. And in terms of the cure for that, again, the cure is inside. I used to suffer from night sweats as well. And it's about being gentle on yourself and looking inside and seeing how you can connect with joy and reduce the stress in your life. So in terms of this sort of cloudy feeling, again, it's I wonder if she's tracked it, because when I tracked mine, I actually realized that it was from ovulation to my period, that it was like half the month. It was literally in PMS half the month. And even though you can say, oh, well, then that's your hormones, it's actually not, because not every woman with those hormonal patterns will suffer from that level of moodiness or heaviness or whatever it is. And I can only say that, again, be gentle on yourself. And it's good that your symptoms are getting less. She said that her symptoms are getting less. So maybe her awareness, it sounds to me that her awareness is increasing, the way that she spoke about sort of the sun always being there. But I would just say, be patient and keep on that road of understanding, oh yeah, the sun is always behind the clouds. And I actually don't have to think that much about the clouds passing. I can just let them go. So, without, when I speak to clients, and I obviously go into what's stressful in their lives, etc. But it's about taking whatever it is that we are taking really heavily in our lives. Whether, for some women, it's something about motherhood. For other women, it's something about their career. For other women, it's about their relationship or their body. And lightening up about it and realizing that all the stress that we create about whatever issue it is, or the stories that we've held for, often decades, they're all just created from a thought that we take really seriously, and we just don't have to take them so seriously. And this is actually what our body is trying to tell us. And we spoke about that in the podcast, this idea of we're feeling our thinking, but it's actually an active part. It's an active reaction from the body, our feeling. The feeling is your body is telling you those thoughts, that stress is going to make you feel bad. And that's how you feel it. But the problem is then we feel bad, and then we have more thoughts about feeling bad. And then I used to totally be like this. Then I'd be like, well, I'm, doing so much self-development work and everything, and why should I be feeling bad? And then that's just having more thought.
Yeah.
That's just, building up in your head about how bad you are and how bad things are. And the only way to step beyond it is just to let it all go.
Yeah.
And just to say, oh, I really don't have to put weight on whatever it is I'm putting weight on, because that is just my thinking.
Yeah, I think the whole thing that the foundation that you teach and that I teach when we point to this kind of understanding about how the way the human mind works is like the deeper, like if there's anything to do, right, the deeper understanding of that, I think, about how we are built for everything we're looking for. So I don't like these symptoms of the perimenopause because I want to be calm, I want to be clear, I want to be joyful, I want to be non-stressed. Like that's who we are by default.
Right.
And then we take ourselves away from that with our thinking about, oh, now I have a headache, that means there's something going wrong, or I forgot something, now something's going wrong, I've got hot sweats, and like, how do I handle those? And I don't like them, right? I don't like them, I really don't like them, and I need to find a way to deal with them. And all that, what we're seeking in that is an attempt to get back to what we are without that. So we try and take medication, or we try and do rituals, or we try and do exercise, or we try and eat certain foods or whatever, all to try and get somewhere. And the place we're trying to get is actually what's there, but for all the thinking anyway. Right. And what I love is that we just, all that's going on when we're struggling or suffering, or if you feel meh, is that we've just lost sight of what's really true underneath all of that noise. Like we've just forgotten, and we've probably started looking outside of ourselves for a solution to fix ourselves. So we start thinking, oh, I'm broken. And then we're thinking, so if I'm broken, I need to fix myself. And then we look outside of ourselves for solutions. And I will tell you 100% of the time that we do that, and we all do it, right? 100% of the time that we do that, we'll struggle. Because all that's happened is we've forgotten. And that's what I love about reconnecting back into this understanding of the principles, is they're just a reminder of, but for all that massive thought storm going on, we're exactly where we should be, and our body's operating perfectly, despite any personal thinking we might have about our preferences as to whether we're sweating or migraining or whatever. Our bodies are working perfectly in the moment, but for our thinking that creates a struggle with whatever symptom we've got going on. And the other thing is that I know I've been around Nikki when she's not being there, and I know that in a moment we can sit and we can have the experience that the last 7 years has been pretty down. But actually, that's just our experience in this moment right now. When we think of the last 7 years, is like creating this thought cloud of, oh, the whole last 7 years I haven't been quite right. And that's not true either, because it's not true, because that thought doesn't feel particularly good. It's not accurate. It's just how you feel in this moment right now about the last 7 years. And so there's something about having a deeper understanding about how thought creates our experience, where our experience is really coming from. And it's not coming from the hot flushes, and it's not coming from the migraines, and it's not coming from the hairy chin, and it's not coming from all the other symptoms. It's coming from thought in the moment. Just really, really simple. So it's a misunderstanding of where our experience comes from. And it's a non-realization of who we really are underneath all of that, which is never broken, works perfectly, has clarity, has joy, and has peace of mind underneath all of that. So I just want to come back to the questions. Right, so Julie's asking, I'm just picking these at random, guys. I'm sorry if I missed your question. Just post it again, because there's a lot of questions coming in on the screen. So Julie's saying, it made me realize how I get hot flushes when I'm in my mindfulness class, probably 3 or 4 in the couple of hours I'm there. Not during the meditation, but during the talks, which are more emotional or bringing up feelings of anxiety or sadness. Can you throw any light on that at all, please, Tanya?
Okay. Well, I heard hot flushes called a power surge, just in another looking at comments on a video about menopause. Well, I quite like that. But I think, first of all, the whole thing about heat at midlife, it's so interesting because I think that the body obviously needs to heat up a little bit. Just like when we're pregnant again, and just like teenagers that choose to wear shorts in the middle of winter, and you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, it's hot. And so I think that it seems that, first of all, no one knows what happened, why women have hot flushes at midlife during perimenopause and menopause. No one can explain it. They'll tell you it's about your hormones, etc., but they don't actually know why that's happening. But it does seem that our bodies need to raise their temperatures for some reason, because they're going through this change. And then I can only say about hot flushes is that they can be cured through what we're talking about. Because I used to suffer from night sweats, which is just the same, happening at night. But I know other women who've suffered from night sweats and have also been able to cure their night sweats just through reaching this understanding. And I understand night sweats and hot flushes just as any other symptom. It's just a message. It's a message from the body. And it seems that if all women's temperatures have gone up a little bit during perimenopause and menopause, it's just like the body sort of riding this temperature and using it as an easy way to communicate with women, because 85% of women in Western cultures suffer from hot flushes during perimenopause and menopause. So, and we spoke about this in the podcast. In Japan, it's like 10%. And it's not about just tofu, because in other countries, it's much lower as well. So I just think that hot flushes are just like any other symptom, but they have a lot of thought attached to them, because it's just like, oh no, I'm sweating and, I'm out of place. And if you're at work or wherever you are, then it can feel incredibly uncomfortable, and that can lead to things getting worse. But it's just, if we can have less thinking about them and just accept them as just part of the process, and like any other symptom, it's just the classic symptom for women in menopause, but it's just, for me, it's just like any other symptom.
I just wanted to jump in there as well, if that's all right, Tanya, because so what happens is that sometimes, this is my experience with migraines or headaches or anxiety symptoms, so same I think when I'm looking at your question, Julie, but like sometimes, like at one point you got a hot flush when you're in your mindfulness class, right? And it happened during a particularly emotional part of when you were listening to the talk. And so what we do as human beings is we look outside of ourselves and we go, right, what caused that? Holy shit, I don't want that to happen again. What caused that? Because if we can identify the cause, then we feel like we can kind of avoid it, or we can make sure it doesn't happen again. And so completely innocently, when we look for something outside of ourselves that's causing that symptom, and you're like, oh goodness me, it happened in my mindfulness class, but just in this bit of the mindfulness class, perhaps it's caused by anxious thinking. And then guess what happens next time you go to your mindfulness class, right? Is you start to experience the same sensation again. And it's not because the mindfulness class is causing it, it's because you're now looking for it in your mindfulness class, consciously or unconsciously, because you've made that connection that that's where it's coming from. Right, that it's coming from that particular outside in, it's coming outside in. And what I see more and more is that's how we end up in situations where we can't go into a supermarket, or we can't go down a motorway, or we can't get in a car, or we're scared of migraines, right? It's that we try and avoid the things we think are triggering them. But the more you see, the more you get a feel for, and you're in the program, so you're going to see more and more about this. It's like all that's happened is some anxious thinking came through your head, and now you've made a huge meaning of it, and you're trying to work out why and how and what's causing it and all the rest of it, and experiencing some of the symptoms that go alongside that. So in terms of like what to do, I would just recommend, Julie, you like stay in this conversation and you start to see more how it's not being caused by the things that you think it's being caused by. And just sit with the question like, well, what if that's not true? What if it's possible to have any experience in my mindfulness class during whatever part of the class? And it's not, there's nothing in it that can inherently trigger hot flushes or anxiety. And just sit with that question and just notice that every time you can sit in this, this is true, because when you sit in the class, there are other people sitting next to you who are not experiencing a hot flush. And if the talk part of your mindfulness class caused hot flushes, then everyone would be at it. And you'll also notice that there's sometimes that you go and you get them, and sometimes you go and you don't, until you start getting caught in the thought storm of every time I sit down, they normally happen within 20 minutes, right? And if that's the thinking that you have, then guess what you're going to experience, right? Every time, guaranteed. So that's what I'd love you to get curious about with that question as well, Tanya. It's like every time we start thinking that there's something external that's causing us to feel a certain way, then we're throwing ourselves off. Oh, Claire's got a good question here. So I think the guilt and the should play on our minds so much. They have a lot to answer for, I think. And I think that links back to what you were saying, Tanya, about things being heavy, like a particular area that's heavy in our lives.
Right. Yeah, and this is why I think that women are suffering in perimenopause and menopause so much more than previous generations. And it's hard to know exactly, because women talking more, sharing more their experiences than ever before. But I spoke about this in the podcast, that if you ask older generations about their experiences at midlife, it's just not going to be as extreme. Maybe you can say, well, they've forgotten, but I think that they probably remember, because it goes on for some years. It's not going to be as extreme as what we're experiencing now. And we're really, this Generation X, I don't know if any of you read that. There was a big article going around about, is this your midlife crisis, and Generation X's in Oprah magazine. And it really was just such a fascinating look at how many outside factors are on our plates, as it were, like we keep them on our shoulders. And we have all these ideas about how the economy should treat us, or the kind of job that we should be in, or the pay that we should be getting, or our parents that we need to look after, and I know that I'm not trying to belittle stress in stressful times. For me, however, I always look back at my grandmothers, who had much more difficult lives than I could ever imagine. And I know that they got through it. And they had far fewer expectations than we do today, or they had far fewer shoulds than we do today. And really, it's something that will come up more and more with this understanding, when you realize, oh, all of that is just all made up. Everything that I tell myself that I should be doing or should be, or even that I tell myself that I am, in terms of my personality, because I believe that that's what I am. And that's how I've been for the last decade, 2 decades, as long as I can remember. Even that's made up. And so if you've been all your life a woman who's gone out to work, 9-to-5 job, stable, and all of a sudden that's not lighting you up anymore, you'll be like, well, that's the kind of person I am. Well, that's made up. So we really are faced with incredible amounts of stresses and should be's, and living in these lives of where I should be, in every part of our lives, and it's all made up.
Well, and also it strikes me that the body's, I keep coming back to this body's wisdom, but like the body's wisdom the body has ways of slowing us down, and they can be really, really subtle, right? So if you're really tuned into it, like you start feeling stressed or overwhelmed or anything, that's a sign that your thinking's gone speedy, and it's a time to just like get reflective. And then, but because we're so busy all the time, and we're so busy in our heads, and we're so busy in our lives, we don't hear that quieter voice that lets us know when to take a break, or lets us know that there's something maybe more important about life to see. We're so busy all the time. And a lot of us in an attempt to actually never have to hear that voice, right? 'Cause we're scared of what it might actually say. on an unconscious level. But I think the body is so wise, and it has so many ways of slowing us down. And it occurs to me that what a beautiful design to have it as you're about to, for us now, about to go into, you know, we're going to go into a whole new phase of our lives, that the body has a way of slowing us down if we listen to it. I mean, you can fight it all the way and you'll have all the hot flushes and migraines you like, right? But if our body has a way of slowing us down, and when we slow down, we have space to get reflective. And when we have space and quiet to get reflective, we can hear that little voice about what might be next for us. And I just think, isn't that awesome? Like, how I feel quite sorry for men in a way. They don't get, well, they have their own ways, right? They get their heart attacks and their cancer scares and all the rest of it, right? We all get those. But to have that built in is like a gentle, like, pause now, like time for reflection, and no rush decisions, right? That you've got years to make this decision and this gentle transition. But it's a chance for some space for something new to come through. Because let's face it, who wants to live in their 50s like they did in their early 30s? Like, rushing around producing babies whilst holding down a full-time job, and, you know, trying to get a mortgage, and, you know, out on the town all the time, and then not because you've got kids, and but still trying to make the ends meet. And like, oh my God, thank God we don't have to live like that. But, you know, I know that the pace of my life kind of still tries to emulate that. And then I have thinkings about should and all the rest of it that get associated to that. But it's just, this whole conversation is just giving me an appreciation again back into the wisdom of the body that slows us down when necessary, so that we have the space to get reflective and create, you know, more wonderful stuff in our lives, but at a totally different level of consciousness. That's what I see, like, our journey through life is like, we don't live now like we did when we were teenagers or when we were toddlers, right? Because we've shifted in a level of consciousness. That's what human beings do, whether they have this understanding or not. It's a natural process to shift in consciousness as you grow older. So the things that were so important, like eating as many sweets as you can, staying up all night long, and being able to go on the iPad 24/7, right? That my 9-year-old wants to do, they're just not so appealing to my 12-year-old, 13-year-old, nearly 14-year-old, right? She's just not, it just doesn't appeal to her so much. She has a different set of priorities. And then as we go into our 20s, again, we have a different set of priorities. As we get pregnant, our priorities shift and change all on their own. As we have children, that happens. As we get into our 40s, and then this is just another stage. It's like, this is a shift in consciousness, which isn't always comfortable, but it's because there's something really cool coming that we just can't even imagine from this level of consciousness where we are right now. Like, that is friggin' awesome.
Yeah. And what I love about it also is that you can see it on a personal level, and you can see it on the level of humanity as well, because the species actually needs us to get wiser. It needs us. This is the way I understand it. It's not only that we're going through this transition so that we are wiser and about how we're going to live healthier and happier, but the species needs it too. We need to be beyond that learning curve at midlife, let's say, so that we can get to the other side and be the wiser women in the public zone. And I just think that that's also stunning. Any way you look at it.
Yeah, like, and how cool we are now. We always keep talking about, oh, there's this like older population coming up. There's going to be, isn't it terrible? We're going to have a huge number of older people in our population. And it's like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if that's just what the world needed right now? Right. You know? So one last question, and then we'll probably wrap it up, guys. But I really enjoyed doing this, actually. This is quite good fun. So keep posting questions. If we don't get to answer them here, we can answer them on the chat straight afterwards. But Claire's question, if it's a subconscious thing and we don't actually know we are thinking it, how can we stop it? For instance, not realizing you're thinking about your symptoms when you're in a supermarket and then feeling strange because you're subconsciously thinking it. Hope that makes sense. So that's a question on the lines of, if I don't know that I'm thinking something, how can I change it? So I have an answer to that, but I want to hear yours, Tanya.
Okay, well, it goes back to this idea that we're feeling our thinking, but that we're feeling it in an active way. So you actually don't need to analyze your thinking. You can just, you live in it. You live in the feeling. So once you're tuned into your state of mind and how you're feeling, you don't actually have to do anything. You just have to be aware of it. And when you're aware of it and you're saying, okay, I'm right now feeling sad or stressed or anxious, it's totally okay. That's a human experience. And we actually need to be in those experiences so that we can realize, oh, this is joy, that, you know, this is peace of mind. And if we didn't have those human experiences, we wouldn't be as wise as we are. So it's really about letting it go and saying, okay, I'm giving myself the chance to just move through this, and it's going to be okay. Rather than, what is the thought that I'm having? How do I need to take that apart? How can I let that go? Where's the sun beyond the clouds? No, I'm having a human experience, and that's okay.
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, that's kind of what I would point to as well, is that you don't need to analyze the content of your thinking. Instead, I would point you to understanding the nature of thought. So like how thought works and what it does. Like far more interested in looking in that direction, because when we know more about what thought is and what it does, we get less scared of it. And when we're less scared of it, then we can be anxious and we can be scared and we can be fearful and we can be angry and we can be sad and we can be upset. And it's not a problem anymore. That's freedom, right? So all the best kind of personal development strategies will go in and look and teach you how to manage your thinking better, right? So how do you take a thought and turn it into another thought? How can you make sure you never have that thought again? How can you do something to prevent particular thoughts and live in other thoughts more of the time? And what we're pointing to, which is a completely different place, is like when you understand more about the nature of thought, that it's transient, that it's ephemeral, that it's like clouds, that it's not real, it's not substantial, then you can be anxious or stressed all you like. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And with that, you can find peace even when you're anxious, and peace even when you're stressed, and peace even when you're angry or upset. Now, this is it seems like a crazy note to end on, because you might be watching this and thinking, what is she talking about? So I'm just going to say, if this is something that you get curious about, then, you know, go and have a look on Tanya's website, which is thewiserwoman.com, and go and have a look on my website, which is alittlepeaceofmind.co.uk, and you will find loads of resources there that will point you more to what we've been pointing to underneath this whole podcast about thought, our experience, how we create it, how to live with more peace, and more specifically on Tanya's site, all about menopause, hormones, that kind of thing, if that's what's kind of got you interested today. So this has been really cool. I think apart from my getting stuck in an ugly face, which was not part of what I planned, the tech, I think, has done as well, allowing us to do this kind of two-screen thing. So it just reminds me to say thank you guys for showing up. This will be, as far as I know, the recording this will post onto the Facebook page. So if you found it valuable, please do share it with your girlfriends and any men that know them. Because as I said on the podcast, I really feel strongly this is something that we should be teaching our girls and our children and our women everywhere, so that menopause isn't this scary, fearful thing we all have to dread that's looming on the horizon that's going to get us at some point. So thank you all for coming. Please share when the recording goes up. And a big thank you to Tanya for showing up and prepared to experiment with the tech and just us getting up and doing this call and getting another hour of her gorgeous time. So thank you.
A big pleasure. And I just want to say also, if people have more questions from this session, but also from the podcast, then just feel free to post them here, and I will answer them, or Nicola will answer them, both of us.
Cool.
So,
okay, guys, so thank you, and we may do another one of these at some point. But take care of yourselves, and we will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.